The Galactic Assembly Hall stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal and living stone. Representatives from 47 species filled the curved seating that rose in endless tiers toward a ceiling that displayed the stars themselves. This was Nexus Prime, the neutral station where the fate of civilizations was decided through words instead of weapons. Today marked the annual Resource Allocation Summit, and Ambassador Laura had attended enough of these meetings to know when something felt wrong. She sat at the human delegation's table with Admiral Shaw beside her, was officially listed as a military advisor, but Laura knew he was there because Earth no longer trusted these gatherings to remain peaceful. She watched the other delegations file into their positions, with their silver skin and cold eyes, clicking their mandibles in that way that passed for polite conversation among their kind, the serpentine coiling into their specially designed seats. Everyone was here, and everyone was watching the human table with expressions that Laura had learned to read over 15 years of service. Secretary General Cora rose to his full height at the central podium. He was tall and with compound eyes that reflected the chamber's light like broken mirrors. His voice came through the translation system as smooth and reasonable, but Laura had stopped trusting that voice years ago. The opening ceremonies proceeded as expected: trade reports, colony updates, minor disputes resolved through mediation. Laura allowed herself to relax slightly. Perhaps her instincts had been wrong. Perhaps this summit would pass like all the others, with humanity maintaining its fragile place among the stars. Then Cora called for new business, and the High Minister rose to speak. Resolution 7 Alpha. Laura heard the words and felt her blood turn to ice. The spoke calmly, presenting data and projections with the confidence of someone who had already counted the votes. Humanity's expansion rate was unsustainable, he claimed. Their breeding was too fast, their appetite for resources too great. For the stability of galactic civilization, human territory must be restricted to their current 12 systems, permanently. Laura stood to respond. She spoke of cooperation, of the contributions humanity had made in their 60 years among the stars, the medical advances, the trade networks, the cultural exchange that had enriched every species they had encountered. She offered compromises, new treaties, shared development zones, everything short of surrender. The chamber listened in silence, and then Cora spoke again. The intelligence service had been monitoring human communications, he announced. Evidence had been gathered of secret military buildup, weapons development, expansion plans that violated every agreement humanity had ever signed. Laura knew it was a lie. She could see it in the way Cora's mandibles twitched, in the too perfect timing of this revelation. But the evidence was presented on every screen in the chamber, and the other delegations were nodding along as if seeing confirmation of fears they had always harbored. Leaned close to her ear, his voice was barely a whisper. "We need to leave now," he said. Laura shook her head. "Not yet, not until the vote." The vote came quickly. Species after species sided with some looked apologetic, others looked relieved. The abstained, but it made no difference. The final count was 31 in favor, 16 against. Humanity had been caged. Laura remained standing throughout the count. She felt his hand on her arm, steadying her, but she did not need steadying. She was not going to fall. She was not going to cry. She was not going to give them the satisfaction of seeing humanity break. When the count was finalized, Laura did something she had never done in 15 years of diplomatic service. She reached up and removed her translation device. The small implant came free with a soft click, and suddenly the chamber's noise became meaningless. Alien voices reduced to clicks and hisses and rumbles that carried no meaning. She spoke in English, pure, unfiltered English that none of them could understand without their own translators working overtime to catch up. "You have made your choice," she said. Her voice was steady. "Now witness ours." She turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, she heard rise. Then the rest of the human delegation. 12 men and women who had come to represent Earth and her colonies, all rising together, all walking away from the table where they had been judged and found wanting. The alien delegates watched in confusion. Some called out, their translated voices echoing across the chamber. What was happening? Where were the humans going? This was not proper procedure. The resolution still required implementation discussions. Laura did not look back. She walked through the great doors of the assembly hall and into the corridor beyond. Her delegation followed in silence. None of them spoke until they reached the docking bay where their ships waited. Was the first to break the silence. "What now?" he asked. Laura looked at him, and for the first time she allowed herself a small smile. "Now we show them what humanity does when we have nothing left to lose," she said. The human vessels undocked from Nexus Prime one by one. Laura watched through her viewport as the great station grew smaller behind them. Somewhere in that station, the assembly was probably still debating what had just happened. Let them debate, she thought. Let them wonder. The lead vessel's navigation officer reported ready status on drives that had never been activated in the presence of alien sensors. Laura nodded her approval. "All ships," she commanded, "engage Exodus protocols." The vessels accelerated, not with the standard drives that galactic civilization had used for, not with the engines that every species understood and trusted. The human ships moved with something new, something fast, something that left no trace for sensors to follow. On Nexus Prime, alarms began to sound. The station's operators scrambled to understand what they were seeing. The human ships had not simply left, they had vanished. One moment they were there, moving away at normal speed. The next moment they were gone, leaving nothing but distorted space and unanswered questions. In the assembly hall, Secretary General Cora received the report and felt something he had not experienced in decades of political maneuvering. He felt uncertainty. The humans had walked away from the table. That much he had expected, predicted even. A temporary tantrum before they returned to accept their new boundaries. But those drives, that technology, where had it come from? How long had humanity been hiding it? And more importantly, what else were they hiding? The questions would multiply in the days to come. For now, Cora simply stood at the podium and watched the empty seats where the human delegation had once sat. The chamber was quiet. The vote had passed. Humanity had been contained. So why did victory feel so much like the beginning of something terrible? 3 months passed, and the galaxy learned what absence meant. Trade Minister coiled before the Emergency Economic Council of the Confederation and delivered news that made his scales turn pale. Human shipping had ceased entirely. Not reduced, not rerouted. Ceased. The cargo vessels that had once carried goods between 100 worlds now sat dark in human ports, or had vanished entirely into the void that human space had become. The numbers were catastrophic. 60% of rare earth processing in the galaxy had flowed through human refineries. 40% of medical supplies originated from human pharmaceutical colonies. The entertainment networks that kept billions occupied during their idle hours had gone dark when the human content servers stopped transmitting. And the shipping, the endless, reliable, impossibly efficient human shipping that had connected markets across 10,000 light years. Gone. All of it gone. Had tried to reach his human contacts through back channels. He had sent messages to business partners he had known for decades. The messages vanished into silence. No responses. No automated replies. Nothing. On the other side of the galaxy, Intelligence Director Mora faced her own crisis. The Empire had celebrated the passage of Resolution 7 Alpha as a triumph of galactic cooperation. They had contained the human threat. They had secured the future. Now Mora stood before the Imperial Council and admitted that she had no idea what the humans were doing. Spy drones sent to human space returned with corrupted data. Long-range sensors showed nothing but static where 12-star systems should have been. Ships that ventured too close to the human border simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not captured. They sent no distress signals. They simply stopped existing. One probe had made it further than the others before contact was lost. In its final transmission, it had recorded a single message broadcast on all frequencies. The words were simple: "Do not enter. Final warning." Moore had analyzed that message for weeks. The humans had not said what would happen if someone entered. They had not made threats or issued ultimatums. They had simply stated a fact and expected it to be obeyed. That confidence frightened her more than any weapon. The Galactic Assembly convened emergency session after emergency session. Species that had voted for the resolution now demanded answers. Where were the humans? What were they doing? Why had no one anticipated this response? Secretary General Cora offered reassurances that rang hollow in the face of mounting evidence that something had gone terribly wrong. The humans will return, he insisted. They depend on galactic trade as much as anyone. Their isolation is unsustainable. Give them time to realize their mistake. But time passed, and the humans did not return. Instead, the cracks in galactic civilization began to spread. The economy collapsed first. Their merchant fleets had been designed around human shipping routes, their warehouses filled with goods waiting for human transports that would never arrive. Billions lost their livelihoods. Governments fell. The great trading houses that had built fortunes on human reliability watched those fortunes evaporate. Medical shortages followed. Human pharmaceutical colonies had produced treatments for diseases that affected dozens of species. Without those supplies, hospitals began to ration. Conditions that had been easily treatable became death sentences. The dying cursed the assembly with their final breaths. Commander Cole had once captained a cargo vessel called the Honest Run. He had spent 20 years moving goods between human space and the wider galaxy, building relationships with alien merchants, and earning a reputation for fair dealing. Now he sat in the bridge of a military vessel, watching sensor readouts that showed nothing but empty space where his old routes had once run. His new assignment was border patrol, not against aliens trying to enter human space, against humans trying to leave. The Exodus protocols had locked down every system, every station, every ship. No one went in or out without authorization from the highest levels of the new human government. Did not know what that government was planning. He only knew that he had been told to wait and to trust that the plan existed. Rumors spread faster than light through the alien networks. Some said the humans were building weapons of unimaginable power. Others claimed they had discovered something in deep space, something that had changed them. A few whispered that the humans had simply given up, that their worlds were dying behind that curtain of silence. Each rumor was more frightening than the last, because none of them could be confirmed or. 6 months after the walkout, a deep space observatory on the edge of human territory detected something that changed everything. Energy signatures of a scale never before recorded. Power outputs that suggested construction projects spanning entire star systems. Whatever the humans were building, it was big enough to reshape the galaxy. The observatory transmitted its findings to Nexus Prime, where the data caused panic in the assembly halls. Mora studied the readings and felt her certainty crumble. This was not a weapon. The energy patterns were wrong for weapons. This was something else, something she did not have the framework to understand. Cora called for calm. He insisted that the readings could be misinterpreted, that the humans were likely bluffing, creating false signatures to intimidate the galaxy into revering the resolution. No species could build on such a scale. It was impossible. But the readings continued. Day after day, the energy signatures grew stronger. Whatever was being built was approaching completion, and still the humans said nothing. Still they maintained their silence. Trade Minister made one final attempt to reach his human contacts. He sent a message offering anything: trade concessions, political support, personal wealth, anything to restore the relationship that had sustained his people for generations. The message, like all the others, vanished into the void. Weeks later, a response came. Not from his contacts, not from any official human channel, just a single line of text transmitted on a frequency that should have been impossible to reach. You should have treated us as partners. Now you will watch us leave. Read the message again and again, trying to understand. Leave. Leave where? There was nowhere to go that was not already mapped and claimed by galactic civilization. The humans could not simply leave. But as he stared at the message, a terrible understanding began to form. What if they could? What if those energy signatures represented something beyond weapons or defenses? What if the humans had found a door that no one else knew existed? What if they were about to walk through it and never come back? The thought was too large to hold. Set the message aside and began composing urgent communications to every contact he had left in the assembly. Something was coming, something that would change everything, and the galaxy was running out of time to stop it. The observation vessel Gray Horizon moved through space at the edge of human territory. Captain stood at the helm, watching the sensors with growing unease. She commanded a joint species crew assembled by the Galactic Assembly to investigate the energy readings that had thrown galactic civilization into panic. Beside her, Science Officer adjusted his instruments with the careful precision of the people. Had spent his entire career studying humans. He found them fascinating in ways that his colleagues did not understand. They were short-lived and fragile, but they built things that lasted. They fought and argued among themselves, but they came together when threatened. They were young as species went, barely 100,000 years of civilization, yet they had achieved in decades what others had taken to accomplish. He had always believed that humanity would transform the galaxy. He had simply never imagined they might do it by leaving. The Gray Horizon crossed the boundary into human space without incident. No weapons fire, no warning signals, just silence and empty coordinates where patrol ships should have been stationed. Ordered her crew to proceed with caution, but there was nothing to be cautious about. Human space seemed abandoned. They traveled for 3 days before they encountered anything. A single human vessel, small and clearly unarmed, appeared on their sensors and moved to intercept. Ordered defensive positions, but the human ship made no aggressive moves. It simply approached close enough to transmit, then stopped. The message began to play. Admiral Shaw appeared on screen, looking older than remembered from assembly broadcasts. His uniform was different, not the dress whites of diplomatic functions, something simpler, working clothes for someone with real work to do. To whoever receives this message began, "You have questions. I will give you answers, but I need you to listen until I am finished. What I am about to tell you will be difficult to believe." The bridge crew of the Gray Horizon watched in silence as explained. Humanity had not retreated, had not hidden, had not built weapons or defenses or any of the things the galaxy had imagined during those months of silence. Humanity was leaving, not leaving the assembly, leaving the galaxy. The energy signatures that had caused such concern were construction projects, gateway stations, massive structures capable of opening passages through space itself, creating doorways to other galaxies, specifically to Andromeda. Felt his heart stop. The had too, and both of them froze in his chest as he processed what he was hearing. Intergalactic travel was theoretical, impossible. The distances were too vast, the energy requirements too enormous. No species in the history of galactic civilization had ever achieved such a thing. Continued. The technology was not human in origin. They had found it. Ancient ruins on a colony world, buried beneath millions of years of geological change. The builders had left instructions, specifications, everything needed to recreate their greatest achievement. Humanity had spent decades studying those ruins, slowly piecing together the knowledge required to make the technology work. They had always intended to share it. His voice carried weight as he spoke those words. This was supposed to be humanity's gift to the galaxy, a new era of exploration, new frontiers for every species, a chance to start fresh somewhere beyond the boundaries that had constrained civilization for. But you made it clear that we are not welcome here, said. You voted to cage us, to limit us, to treat us as a threat to be contained rather than a partner to be embraced. So we will take our gift elsewhere. We will go somewhere we are wanted. The message continued with technical data, construction timelines, energy projections. At current rates, the gateways would be complete in less than 2 months. After activation, humanity and anyone who chose to join them would pass through. Then the gateways on this side would be destroyed. No one would be able to follow. The final part of the message was an invitation, coordinates to a meeting point. Any species that wished to join humanity in their exodus was welcome. Any individual who wanted to start fresh in a new galaxy could come. There would be no judgment, no requirements, just a door that was open to anyone brave enough to walk through it. His face disappeared from the screen. The message was over. The bridge of the gray horizon remained silent for a long moment. Found her voice first. Can you verify any of this? She asked. The scientist was already working his instruments, cross-referencing the technical data from the message with the energy readings they had collected. The numbers match, he said finally. His voice was barely above a whisper. The construction scale, the power outputs, the spatial distortions we detected, it all matches what would be required for gateway technology of this magnitude. They are telling the truth. Sat back in her command chair and tried to process what she had just learned. The humans were not building weapons. They were building an escape route, and they were going to use it to leave everyone behind. She thought about what that meant, about the technology that humanity would take with them when they left, about the future that could have been if the assembly had made different choices, about the door that was about to close forever. Sir, her communications officer reported, we are receiving transmissions from the assembly. They want our findings immediately. Did not respond right away. She looked at the coordinates from the human invitation, a meeting point, a chance to see the gateways before they activated, a choice that every being on her ship would have to make for themselves. Acknowledge their transmission, she said finally. Tell them we are still gathering data, then plot a course for those coordinates. I want to see this for myself before I report anything. Looked at her with surprise. Captain, that would be deviating from our mission orders. Smiled without humor. Our mission orders assumed the humans were building weapons. They assumed we would find something that could be fought or negotiated with. Instead, we found a door to another galaxy that is going to close in 2 months. I think the situation calls for some flexibility. The gray horizon changed course. Behind them, the assembly waited for news that would change everything. Ahead of them, humanity prepared to make the greatest journey in the history of any species. And somewhere in between, a choice was forming that would define the future of everyone involved. The news spread through galactic civilization like fire through dry grass. Humanity was leaving, not retreating, not negotiating, leaving the galaxy entirely and taking the greatest technological discovery in history with them. Secretary General Cora stood at his podium in the assembly hall and watched order collapse. Delegations that had sat in careful diplomatic arrangement for centuries were now shouting over each other. Accusations flew. Blame shifted. The careful political balance that had held galactic civilization together was crumbling in real time. The demanded action. Their High Minister insisted that the gateway technology belonged to all species, not just humanity. It should be seized, taken by force if necessary. No single species had the right to claim such power for themselves. But the military analysts painted a different picture. Human defenses had become impenetrable during the months of silence. The technology they had hidden from the galaxy included weapons and shields that made their border impossible to breach. Any attack would fail. Any invasion would be destroyed before it reached the first gateway station. Trade Minister addressed the assembly with desperation in his voice. The Confederation had already announced their intention to accept humanity's invitation. They would join the Exodus. They would leave everything they had built over 10,000 years and start fresh in another galaxy, because anything was better than watching their civilization continue to crumble. They made the same choice. So did the Collective, and the Stellar Remnant, and 4 other species whose names would soon be erased from galactic maps. 8 civilizations had decided that humanity's offer was worth more than everything they would leave behind. Ambassador Laura received the news of each acceptance with quiet satisfaction. She had not expected so many. She had prepared for the possibility that humanity would make this journey alone. Instead, they would have companions, partners, friends who had chosen to stand with them when the rest of the galaxy had chosen to stand against them. Admiral Shaw reported that the gateway stations were ahead of schedule. The construction crews had worked without rest, driven by a purpose that transcended normal motivation. They were building the door to a new beginning. Every worker, every engineer, every person involved understood what that meant. On Nexus Prime, Secretary General Cora made a decision that would define his legacy. He reached out directly to Laura through private channels. No diplomatic protocols, no formal procedures, just one leader speaking to another. The resolution can be reversed, he offered, completely and immediately. All restrictions on human expansion will be lifted. Your species will have full and equal standing in the assembly. Whatever wrongs have been done can be undone. Laura's response came within hours. The resolution was not the cause, she said. It was the symptom. You showed us who you are. We believed you. There would be no reconciliation, no last-minute change of heart. Humanity had made their choice, and they would not be persuaded to unmake it. The revelation that Cora had attempted to negotiate and failed sent shockwaves through the remaining assembly members. If the Secretary General himself could not change humanity's mind, then no one could. The door was truly closing. Riots broke out on a dozen worlds. Populations demanded that their governments do something, anything. Some wanted their species to join the Exodus. Others wanted the gateways destroyed before anyone could use them. The chaos spread faster than any authority could contain it. Captain had made her own choice. She broadcast a message to her crew as the gray horizon approached the coordinates humanity had provided. Any member of the crew who wished to join the Exodus had her permission to transfer to human vessels. Any who wished to return to the assembly could take the gray horizon back. Half her crew chose to leave. Among them, the scientist had spent his career studying humans from a distance. Now he would spend the rest of his life working alongside them. The opportunity was too great to refuse. Watched her crew members depart and felt no resentment. They were making the choice that was right for them. She would return to the assembly and deliver her report, because that was the choice that was right for her. Someone had to tell the galaxy what they had lost. On Prime, the government that had ruled for 1,000 years collapsed in a single night. The intelligence reports that had condemned humanity were exposed as fabrications. Cora had orchestrated the entire operation. The evidence against humanity had never existed. The vote that had driven them away had been based on lies. The Secretary General fled before he could be arrested. His fate became a mystery that historians would debate for centuries. Some said he died in the chaos. Others claimed he escaped to human space and begged to be included in the Exodus. The truth was never discovered. 2 weeks remained before the gateways activated. The Empire made their final decision. If they could not have the gateway technology, no one would. Their fleet began moving toward human space with weapons charged and orders to destroy everything they encountered. Ambassador Laura received word of the approaching fleet and felt neither fear nor anger. She had expected something like this. They had always believed that power came from taking what others had built. They could not accept that humanity was simply walking away with something they wanted. "Let them come," she told Admiral Shaw. "We have prepared for this." Nodded. The defenses were ready. The evacuation schedules had been adjusted to account for possible conflict. Everything that could be done had been done. Now they simply had to wait and see if the galaxy would let them go in peace, or if blood would be shed in the final hours before departure. The fleet crossed into human space, weapons armed, shields raised, ready to take by force what they could not have through negotiation. They did not expect what happened next. A fleet appeared between them and the gateways. Not human ships, civilian vessels from dozens of species, merchants and refugees and scientists and dreamers, ordinary people who had chosen to stand with humanity in the final moments. They positioned themselves as a living shield, daring to fire on the entire galaxy to reach their target. Secretary General Cora's replacement broadcast a warning. Any attack on these vessels would be considered an act of war against the assembly itself. The fleet hesitated, then stopped, then slowly, painfully. There would be no battle. There would be no final confrontation. Humanity would leave in peace. Laura watched the ships retreat and allowed herself a moment of relief. It was almost over. The door was almost open, and soon everything would change. The gateway stations hung in space like monuments to ambition. 12 structures, each larger than any space station the galaxy had ever seen, arranged in a perfect circle around a point where reality itself seemed to bend. Ambassador Laura stood on the observation deck of the command vessel and watched the final preparations unfold. Around her, the gathered fleet waited. Human ships by the thousands, vessels from the 8 species that had chosen to join them, civilian craft from dozens of other worlds, carrying individuals and families who had decided that a new galaxy was worth more than everything they would leave behind. The largest migration in the history of any civilization was about to begin. Admiral Shaw reported from the primary gateway station. All systems were ready. Power levels were optimal. The doorway to Andromeda could be opened at any time. Laura nodded. "Not yet," she said. "There is one more thing I need to do." She had prepared a final message for the galaxy they were leaving behind. Not a speech, not a political statement, just words from one person to all the others who would remain when the door closed. The broadcast went out on every frequency. Every species that had sensors pointed toward human space would hear it. Laura did not know if they would listen. She did not know if it would matter, but she had to try. "We do not leave in anger," she began. Her voice carried across the void to receivers on 1,000 worlds. "We leave in sorrow. We came to you 60 years ago as explorers. We hoped to find friends among the stars, and for a time we did. We traded with you, learned from you, shared what we knew and accepted what you offered. We believed that together we could build something greater than any of us could build alone." She paused. The weight of what she was saying pressed down on her, but she continued. "You chose differently. You saw us as a threat to be contained, a problem to be solved. You voted to cage us, to limit us, to deny us the stars that we had worked so hard to reach. And when we refused to accept those limitations, you celebrated. You thought you had won." Laura looked out at the gateway stations. The light that bent around them seemed to pulse, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. "We found something amazing," she said. "A door to places no one has ever been. A chance to start fresh. A gift that we wanted to share with everyone. Instead, we will share it only with those who stood beside us. Those who believed in partnership instead of domination. Those who chose hope over fear." The civilian fleet that had shielded them from there was still out there, watching. Those people would not be joining the exodus. They had made their stand, but their lives were here in this galaxy. Laura honored their choice even as she mourned that it had to be made at all. "We are leaving the door open behind us," she continued. "Not for you to follow. We will destroy the gateways on this side when we pass through, but we are sending you the plans, the specifications, everything you need to build your own doorways when you are ready." She allowed herself a small smile. "When you are ready to be neighbors instead of rulers, you will know where to find us." The message ended. Laura gave the signal to Admiral Shaw. The gateway activation began. Light bloomed at the center of the 12 stations. Not the harsh light of weapons or engines, but something softer. Something that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The fabric of space twisted, folded, and opened into a passage that stretched beyond sight. On the other side, sensors detected a new galaxy, new stars, new worlds, new possibilities that no being from this galaxy had ever imagined. The human ships began to move. One by one, they passed through the gateway and vanished into the light. Laura watched them go. Families who had spent generations among the stars of the Milky Way, now traveling to places that had no names. Children who would grow up never knowing the constellations that their ancestors had used to navigate. An entire civilization stepping into the unknown. The allied species followed. The others who had chosen to start fresh. Was among them, his scientific instruments already recording data that would reshape understanding of physics itself. Captain watched from the gray horizon, which had returned to observe the departure. Half her crew had gone through the gateway. The other half remained with her, bound for home and whatever future awaited them in a galaxy that had just lost its most fascinating species. The last human ships approached the gateway. Laura's vessel was among them. She took one final look at the stars she had known her entire life. The constellations that had guided her people since before they had language to name them. The galaxy that had been humanity's home since the first of them looked up and wondered what was out there. "Goodbye," she whispered, then her ship passed through. On the other side, Laura found what she had hoped for. The passage had worked, the technology had held, and stretching out before her was a galaxy waiting to be explored. The gateways closed behind them. As promised, the stations on the Milky Way side were destroyed. The door was shut. The journey was over. In the assembly hall on Nexus Prime, the new Secretary General stood at the podium and addressed the gathered representatives. The humans were gone. The species that had joined them were gone. And in the databanks of every civilization in the galaxy, the plans for gateway technology sat waiting to be studied. The chamber was quiet. No one knew what to say. They had won their vote. They had contained the human threat, and it had cost them everything. Years passed. The galaxy rebuilt what it could. The absence of humanity was felt in 1,000 small ways that no one had predicted. Medical shortages, trade disruptions, a sense that something vital was missing from civilized space. Eventually, the first gateway was built, though before their departure had left behind detailed instructions. A younger generation, one that did not remember the fear that had driven the original vote, completed the project that their ancestors had begun. A vessel passed through. On the other side, they found not the scattered refugees they had expected. They found a civilization, cities on 100 worlds, trade routes connecting 1,000 systems. Humanity had not just survived their exodus, they had flourished. The message that greeted the arriving ship was simple. The voice that spoke it belonged to a descendant of Laura, a young woman who had never seen the Milky Way but knew its stories. "Welcome, friends. We have been waiting for you." The door was open again. The choice was finally clear. And this time, when the galaxy reached out to humanity, they came as partners instead of rulers. The stars of Andromeda shone, bright above a new beginning.